What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you are excited because it is officially training camp week for the Dallas Cowboys. That is correct. The Cowboys are going to do some football practicing this week, and we are all very, very, very excited about it. But I have to admit to you right away that I am lying to you because I say this week, it's actually last week. All right. I know I did a lot of recording in advance a couple of weeks ago when I went on vacation with my family. I am going on one more small little vacation. We're headed to the beach this coming week. The training camp is starting. Don't worry, things are going to be flowing as normal. You're coming with me to the beach, the whole operation. We're all going together. But I'm recording this video that we're dropping, I believe, on Monday ahead of time. It's Friday, July 21st for me. I always like to say that at the very beginning, just because you never know when news is going to break. I promise you, if something massive happens, that we will have something for you available all throughout the Blog of the Boys universe, bloggingtheboys.com, Blog of the Boys YouTube channel, Blog of the Boys podcast network, all over social media. Follow me at RJ Ochoa, wherever you get stuff. Anyway, let's get to talking. Today, we're going to be addressing 5 roster spots. I wrote about this last week at the site, but I wanted to talk about it here with you because I love you. You mean a lot to me. And these are 5. I guess the genesis for this idea is, you think about training camp and you think about roster spots that are up for grabs. And I once had a conversation a few years ago with one of our writers right now. His name is Brian Martin. And we were kind of talking about like, well, how many roster spots are really like up for grabs, right? Your football team is comprised of 53 players, but it's not like you're going to camp with 90 players and thinking like, well, we got to find 53, right? This really kind of comes down to just a handful of spots that are truly and totally available. Now, we're not looking at that specifically, but I wanted to look at 5 different positions or roles that are still a little bit unsettled that we're hopeful that training camp ultimately kind of shines a light on helping us discern the answer towards. So let's go ahead and start. The first one is super obvious. We've been asking this question basically all off season long, and that is, who is the left guard on this team going to be? It is very easy to answer. I feel like it should be Tyler Smith, but the problem is that anytime you try to put together a starting 5 for Dallas Cowboys offensive linemen, you immediately have like 6 questions that pop up, right? So if you're putting Tyler Smith at left guard, okay, great. Who's playing left and right tackle? Tyron Smith at left, Terrence Steele at right. Okay, I'm good with that. Is Terrence Steele healthy? Can he play right tackle right now? Let's say the answer to that is yes. What's going to happen if and when Tyron Smith gets hurt? And you kind of have to assume that's going to happen. We've talked about that for many years now because Tyron Smith has gotten hurt each and every season since 2016. Dak Prescott is literally the longest tenured starting quarterback in the NFL with his respective team, and he has never had a full season of Tyron Smith at his disposal. So what happens then? Does Tyler Smith kick out to left tackle? Is Terrence Steele still healthy, like we said? Okay, well, maybe we just want to play Tyler Smith at left tackle all the time. Then who's your left guard? Are you putting Tyron at right tackle because it's hard to put Tyron Smith on the bench? Is Terrence Steele going to play left guard like the Cowboys have kind of talked about to this point? Is it going to be Josh Ball? Is it going to be Matt Waletzko? Is it going to be Matt Farniok? Is it going to be Chuma Edoga? Is Austin Richards or TJ Bass is one of the rookies going to kind of challenge for the spot? It is so strange because, again, we can come up with an answer that we feel very good about, but we can pick at that so easily. And so I'm fascinated to see what happens when everyone is available to the Cowboys. If Terrence Steele is not ready to go at the very beginning, obviously that changes the calculus right off the bat. But I think the best collection of talent, I think the best plan forward is Tyron at left tackle, Tyler at left guard, and then if and when Tyron gets hurt, you just kick Tyler out and you go with whatever you want at left guard, whether that's Matt Farniok or any one of those other options. But that is the main question that the Cowboys probably have the answer to themselves, that they've kept very close to the vest up until this point in time, but we are all anxious to learn. So along these lines, number 2 for me is reserve tackle. And this is kind of strange too. And I think we've kind of had to just come to terms with, this is not, your older siblings, Dallas Cowboys offensive line circa 2014 to 2016-ish, where, we just kind of knew who the Cowboys were going to play at every position every week. And we knew who the swing tackle was. You can't answer that question, right? If I asked you who is the swing tackle for the Dallas Cowboys, because the prompt here says who will it be outside of the main 3, talking about the reserve tackle. Typically, your swing tackle is your 3rd best tackle, right? That's why they're your swing tackle. But the Cowboys have 3 tackles who we really like in Tyron Smith, Terrence Steele, and Tyler Smith. And we don't know how they're going to play them, but they might play them all together all at the same time, whether that's Tyler Smith at left guard or Terrence Steele at left guard and the other 2 at the 2 tackle positions. But who is the reserve tackle then, right? Like, who's the first tackle off the bench? Is it Matt Waletzko? I mean, I say that, somewhat seriously, somewhat unsure, because Matt Waletzko basically didn't play at all last year. And that's a big responsibility. I harped and harped and harped on why it was irresponsible of the Cowboys to entrust the swing tackle position last year to Matt Waletzko and Josh Ball, and that blew up in their face. And that's kind of it. Those are kind of the options for the Cowboys. That reserve tackle, if the Cowboys are playing in a world where their swing tackle, or where their top three tackles, I should say, are in their starting lineup, what happens when an injury happens? Now, again, you don't really have to answer that, because if Tyron is at left tackle and he gets hurt, then Tyler's just going to kick out, right? But what if you have to depend on that? Who is capable of being an adequate tackle in the NFL on this team that is not Tyron Smith, Terrence Steele, or Tyler Smith? That is a question that I want to have answered over the course of the next month out in Oxnard, California. So let's move on. Wide receiver 4, but really 5 to 6. And will KaVontae Turpin make it? So the top 3, as far as Dallas Cowboys wide receivers are concerned, is very chalk, right? CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Brandon Cooks. Awesome. Brandon Cooks was on NFL Total Access last week on Thursday, and he was asked what he is maybe doing differently with the Cowboys that he hasn't done in the past. And he didn't really answer that question, but he said that it's really nice to have special receivers around him. He specifically mentioned CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Jalen Tolbert. I know we all have a sour taste in our mouths from Jalen Tolbert's rookie year with the Cowboys, but it stands to reason he's going to improve this year, not just from the perspective of having a year of the NFL under his belt, but not the same sort of pressure on him, what with Brandon Cooks' arrival and Michael Gallup being another year removed from the torn ACL. I think we're all excited to see Jalen Tolbert in year 2 is my point. But okay, those are the top 4 receivers on the Cowboys. So who is 5? Who is 6? I think we believe Simi Fehoko is probably number 5, but then who's number 6? Are you going to carry KaVontae Turpin? I know that there are a lot of us who really like KaVontae Turpin, and I know that he was on one of our podcasts at Blogging the Boys back in the week of the Super Bowl saying he's going to force the Cowboys to use him on offense. But what if they don't? Right? We're in a day and age where the NFL is sort of slowly but surely getting rid of the value of the return game, right? And that's really what KaVontae Turpin offers this team. And so if the return game isn't a valuable resource for you, or a valuable way to mine some of KaVontae's talents, are you really using him on offense? Because if you're not, then who's your 6th receiver? If we give Simi Fehoko that 5th spot, who's number 6? It comes down to KaVontae Turpin, Dennis Houston, Dontario Drummond, Jalen Brooks, if you believe in him, coming on as a rookie. Jalen Moreno-Cropper, if you want to talk about rookies. There's always an undrafted free agent who we fall in love with. That 6th spot, I think, is, again, somewhat contingent upon how the team values KaVontae Turpin's return abilities, and not even his abilities specifically, but how useful they can be within the confines of the NFL rulebook, and how big of a weapon he can be on offense for them, and really how much they're willing to use him on offense, because we didn't see that a lot last season during KaVontae's rookie year. 4 of our 5 discussion points here today, by the way, are on the offensive side of the ball. We've done 3 of them, which means it's now time to get to number 4. And I could honestly have put this at number 1 because it is a starting position. The starting tight end, are we really sure it's going to be Jake Ferguson? I feel like I'm the only person kind of willing to ask that out loud, at least around Blogging the Boys when we have our roundtables. I love Jake Ferguson. I'm all in. Sign me up for the hype train and the confidence. I'm ready. I'm with you. But he had 22 targets last year. Not 22 receptions, 22 targets. The Cowboys lost their starting tight end, obviously, in free agency. You say lost, but I mean, they let Dalton Schultz walk, whatever. But they have to replace that, right? There has to be a new starting tight end on this team, someone who wasn't the starting tight end a year ago. And Jake Ferguson figures to be the favorite off of seniority, but we're talking about 1 year in the NFL, 22 targets. And I mean, I know that people are not in love with Luke Schoonmaker, but is it impossible? I mean, like, is it impossible that he's the starting tight end by the end of the season? Maybe that doesn't happen week 1 against the Giants, but that position is the most up for grabs. Like I talked about at the beginning, right? If we're kind of, the other discussion points we've had here today are kind of just questions, right? Like what's going to happen? What are the Cowboys going to do? This feels like a roster spot that is truly and totally up for grabs. Who is going to impress? Who's going to kind of take it by the horns and say, it's mine? Is it going to be Jake Ferguson? Is it going to be Luke Schoonmaker? Are we not giving enough credit to it potentially being Peyton Hendershot? Those are the top 3 options, obviously. And some of it will depend on on how the Cowboys feel about Luke Schoonmaker as a rookie, but I am very fascinated to see at what point Schoonmaker, if ever, does he start to factor in and start to get reps with the first team? That is something that I think is one of the more low-key, interesting things to be happening with the Cowboys as training camp is getting ready and set to kick off, if I could speak and use words. Finally, this isn't really a roster spot that comes down to two people, but I do think, I mean, it is. Whatever. I don't know. Cornerback TBD. That's the way I've listed this. Kelvin Joseph or Nashawn Wright. All right. Like the wide receiver group, the top three here, love it. We're all in love, right? You got Trayvon Diggs, you got Stephon Gilmore, you got Deron Bland. I'm not going to really count Jordan Lewis here because the Cowboys have sort of hinted that he is a heavy candidate to start the season on the PUP list, which means he does not factor into our immediate roster math. But Jordan Lewis, obviously a valued part of this secondary, a valued part of this cornerback group. Understand we're talking about positions right away. So if we put Jordan Lewis on ice, so to speak, we've got three with Diggs, Gilmore, and Bland. Eric Scott Jr. has really impressed the Cowboys so far. They obviously traded up for him because he was a visit. They're in love. So that's four right there. We can kind of put CJ Goodwin here. We've talked about that a little bit. We did in our BTB training camp preview series. That's technically his position. And he's maybe, a roster cut candidate if things kind of come down to that. If the Cowboys want to go deep somewhere else, but he is technically a corner, doesn't play the position really. But we'll count him here just for the purposes of the exercise. If you don't want to count CJ Goodwin, fine. Let's throw Israel Mukwamu here, right? You can kind of put Izzy with the safeties if you really want, but he's playing a lot of corner. So there's five if we're not counting CJ Goodwin. So my point here is if we're down to cornerback, that's why it's TBD. If it's 5, 6, or 7, you're not carrying 8 corners. You're not even carrying 7 corners. So who's going to win this final spot between Kelvin Joseph and Nashawn Wright? Kelvin Joseph got some work with the safeties a few months ago as the Cowboys were being very careful, not trying to get fined or anything like that. Not a great sign, right? Not a great sign that your third-year, second-round corner is getting work at safety. Not a great sign for his utilization at corner. Not a great sign that Eric Scott Jr. was the one who got first-team reps over Kelvin Joseph. It's, not ideal to think about moving on from either one of Joseph or Wright because they were day 2 picks 2 years ago. So the Cowboys still counting this season have 2 years of team control contractually over both of them. But the math of it all just doesn't work out. You're not going to carry both of those players in all likelihood. I have a very difficult time seeing how both Kelvin Joseph and Nashawn Wright are on the Cowboys 53-man roster. So this really is going to kind of come down to which one of them beats the other. So we will see, obviously, as training camp unfolds. But those are 5 positions, 5 spots, whatever you want to call it, that I'm very interested to watch when training camp starts, when training camp gets going. Training camp is finally here. We did it. We made it. I can't wait to talk about it with you this week while we are all at the beach. And pretty soon while the Cowboys are in California. I've told you the last video, I will be there myself starting this Sunday. I arrive July the 30th with my friends from San Antonio Sports Star. We'll be there all next week for a full week. We'll have lots of shows on San Antonio Sports Star. So make sure to listen. You can listen to me and my friends. Like I said, we're going to have a great time. Going to be lots of interviews, lots of guests. We'll throw some stuff up here on the channel. So make sure to subscribe. Make sure to check out bloggingtheboys.com. We'll cover all that stuff. The podcast network, you name it. We've got stuff happening because it is the most wonderful time of the year. My name is RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram or Threads at RJ Ochoa, on TikTok at rj.ochoa, or you can send me an email if you would like, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. You can always leave a comment down below, and we'll do our best to get to those as well. For now, I'm going to bid you adieu because I got to go pack for the beach because we got to get in the car and do all that stuff. You know how it goes. So, thanks so much for hanging out, everybody. We'll see you next time.